Buenos días, clase. Vamos a empezar. All right, good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and start, shall we? Today's main topic is greetings. Those initial start the conversation little phrases. All right, I'm going to take over the left-hand side, and when you hear me say that, go ahead and read the right-hand side out loud. If you want to get really good practice, rewind it, and then both say the left-hand side as well as the right-hand side. All right, here's my first line. Buenas tardes, clase. And you would say back, Buenas tardes, señor. Notice the pronunciation is going to be a little bit different from English, because when you see the E in Spanish, it's an A sound. And a lot of times, there aren't those 5 or 6 different pronunciations of an A. It's always going to be A. In English, it could be A, all kinds of things. But in Spanish, it's always a soft sound. So, buenas tardes, clase. All right, our next one is, what day would happen to be today? ¿Qué día es hoy? The response is, hoy es lunes. And that goes back to Monday being named after the moon, right? Something that's lunar. So that's the way you can trick your brain into remembering what Monday is moon day, right? Lunes. And notice, I've now put white punctuation or slash highlights to some of the words, and that's to let you know where your voice should go up. Spanish has a definite pronunciation guide, so usually if it ends in a vowel or N or S, your voice should always go up on the next to last syllable. And if your word happens to end in a consonant, except N or S, then your voice always goes up on the N. That's where you give the extra oomph. So when you see the white, say that with a little bit more stress than the rest of the sentence or slash word. All right, so ¿qué día es hoy? Hoy es lunes. Well, once you know what today is, hopefully you'll be able to figure out what tomorrow is. ¿Qué día es mañana? Again, notice the sound the whole way through. No is at all. Mañana es martes. Wow, that's right. Tomorrow is Tuesday. Well, if we know today and tomorrow, then for goodness sakes, we should be able to figure out the day after tomorrow. So pasado mañana means the day past tomorrow. Which day is that? So, ¿qué día es pasado mañana? Pasado mañana es miércoles. Notice that when you say D's in the middle of words in Spanish, a lot of times it's going to have a TH sound to kind of soften things. So pasado rather than pasado. If you say pasado and domingo, a lot of times you'll start to stand out to natives and they won't think you're truly one of them. And we want you to blend in with the culture. So the better pronunciation you have, the better you're going to shine. All right, so pasado mañana es miércoles. Notice my voice went up on the air, and there's also a little accent in the middle of miércoles. That's what those accents do. They help to tell you where your voice should go up. Because without that little accent, it should be miércoles, right? The next to last syllable. But they don't want you to pronounce it there, so instead they say miércoles. All right. And finally, so once you know all these days of the week, we should hopefully be able to figure out the date. So, ¿cuál es la fecha de hoy? Hoy es el 31 de agosto. Notice, it's not said Augusto. That would be your English training coming into effect and causing a bias when you pronounce. So really focus on these words and how they sound, and you got to make sure it's agosto. So, ¿cuál es la fecha de hoy? Hoy es el 31 de agosto. All right, I'm going to go through one more time and say them at natural speed so that you get to hear them at an advanced level. Buenas tardes, clase. Buenas tardes, señor. ¿Qué día es hoy? Hoy es lunes. ¿Y qué día es mañana? Mañana es martes. ¿Y qué día es pasado mañana? Pasado mañana es miércoles. ¿Y cuál es la fecha de hoy? Hoy es el 31 de agosto. Wow, look at that. If we put all those sentences together, you basically said more than a whole paragraph in Spanish. It's really only the first week or so of Spanish. Awesome stuff. And little by little, you'll be able to memorize that and regurgitate it all by yourself and not have to have a prompter on the screen. All right. So now, either go find somebody in your house or next door or somewhere near and dear to you and ask them these questions. And you can do it in English if they don't know how to say it in Spanish. But try and practice both sides. So, ¿cómo te llamas? What's your name? Me llamo. Notice the double L is a y sound, right, rather than l. So there's no llamas in Spanish, right? It's got to be llamo and llamas. ¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo, and then you can fill in your name. Me llamo Señor A. Ooh, and usually after you greet and meet somebody, you might want to find out where they're from, to see if they're from your hometown or from another part of the world. So the second question is, ¿De dónde eres? Ah, yo soy de Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Or, ¿de dónde eres? Yo soy de Nueva York, Nueva York. ¿De dónde eres? Yo soy de Barcelona, España. So there you go. You have two good questions to first start out a conversation. You get to ask somebody's name, and then you get to ask where they're from. And from there, you can talk about the weather or a wide variety of topics. All right. In our next activity, this is where we're going to be presenting the person that you just talked to somebody else in class. Because a lot of times you want to tell people about people you've brought along for a shopping trip or for an experience and say, hey, John, I want you to meet my good friend Bill. He's just come up from Georgia, and he's visiting with us for a couple days. Or, hey, Harry, come on over here. I want you to meet Lisa. She's our brand new accounts representative. And so introductions are made and pleasantries exchanged, and voila, now people are starting to make connections and relationships. So when you hear te presento a, that's going to be the person that you just found out their name from. So I'd like to introduce you to Harry would be te presento a Harry. And then the person's response could be, mucho gusto. Pleased to meet you. El gusto es mío. The pleasure's all mine. If you're a guy, you could say encantado. I'm so delighted/excited to meet you. If you're a lady, you have to say encantada. Oh, I'm delighted to make your acquaintance, sir. It's such a pleasure. All right, so you can use any one of those three on the right-hand side when you first hear an introduction. And then, of course, besides just giving their name, you probably want to tell about where they're from. So, te presento a Harry. Es de Barcelona, España. Or you could say, te presento a la señora Bilby. Ella es de Boyertown, Pennsylvania. And if you met Mrs. Bilby for the first time, you'd say, mucho gusto. El gusto es mío. Or even encantado for guys, encantada for a girl. All right, so now you've already learned how to ask for the basic days of the week, the dates. You've learned how to introduce one another, right, through this slide and this slide. And you're well on your way to beginning to master Spanish. All right. At the same time in class, we're going to ask them to, in 82 seconds, name 4 good reasons why you should take Spanish. So, yeah, you can make new friends, and you can have a marketable skill, but think of all the different areas where Spanish is used now. Even our own school, we're starting to get a bigger and bigger population/clientele of Hispanic speakers. And so it's going to be even more important than ever to know Spanish and be able to understand their culture as well. So go ahead and say why you think it's so important, or even write down a couple of things in the next 82 seconds why you should continue to take Spanish all the way through your senior year and not just give up after 1 or 2. All right, mark 82 seconds, and I'm going to not wait 82 seconds. I'm just going to advance to the next slide, and you can pause at this time. All right, so here's all the different reasons why it might be great to take Spanish. For number 1, it is so widely spoken all throughout the world, right? So in Spain, all across the sea, as well as all through Latin America and in the islands in the Caribbean, there's tons of countries that have Spanish as their main language. It's over 21, in fact, countries. And those countries constitute about 500 million speakers. So basically, almost twice the amount of people in the United States speak Spanish. And of course, we already have the second most spoken language in the world, with, of course, Chinese being the very first, because they have 1 billion people over there. So that's why they have number 1. If you look at the 500 million speakers, wow, 40 million of those live in the United States. So again, that's like 1 out of every 7 or 8 people in the United States is going to be qualified to speak Spanish at a pretty high rate. So just think of a job, or in your neighborhood, you probably have people who speak Spanish pretty fluently, and you can interact with them. We said 22 different countries. And finally, of course, if you ever work with the United Nations and you go in there and see all their flags and you have the official translator pieces in their ears, they're listening to 1 of 6 languages So as the main speaker is speaking, they're having it translated into one of those different tongues, and then they're able to tell their own people what they just heard or what was just decided on the main floor. All right. And of course, wow, pretty incredible, right? The United States now has more Spanish speakers than Spain, the population over there. Yeah, Spain has a tendency not to go high in numbers in terms of population. They pretty much go even keel. Whereas the United States, we've always liked to expand and move out of our territory. All right, so here's some opportunities. I'll just keep them on the screen for a little bit. If you'd like to read them all, you can pause and check them out. So look at all the different employment opportunities you can have if you speak Spanish. Here's a lot of great fun facts about Spanish itself that you're able to tell your family and friends now. Right? What we just said. All right. And finally, look at all the different skills you can gain just from staying in Spanish and not just going with, yeah, I have a whole my schedule, so I'm just going to keep it that way. Well, then you kind of limit yourself. As my good friend Mr. Fiore used to say, you are representative of human capital. You know, human capital is all the skills, knowledge, and things you can do for a company. And the more human capital you have, the better it is, because then it's easier for you to find a job. It's easier for you to be promoted within a particular job. You might even get more money because you have more skill sets than other people out there. So the more things you can do to put yourself in a great position for life, the better. And so because of all these different things, Spanish is a really good skill to practice for, hopefully with me, the next 4 years.